Hey folks, Ted from Immersion here, and I wanted to talk to you about the concept of Monty Haul Gaming or Monty Haul DMing. For those of you who don't know, this is basically a process, and you can look it up, and I'll even show you a Wikipedia on the Dungeons and Dragons fandom site that kind of shows it. But basically, it's a situation where you get a ton of loot, right? And an overabundance of loot in some format, whether that be experience points, gold, or magic items. It was originally based around the TV show Let's Make a Deal. The host of that show was Monty Haul, Hall. We're talking about Monty Haul, Haul, as in a hall of things. So let's go ahead and take a look at the article, and I thought we could talk through it a little bit. So you can see here, it says sometimes called Monty Haul is a piece of D&D terminology used to describe a style where you get unreasonably generous the amounts of treasure, rewards, and other experience. So if we scroll down, we can see it's actually a glossary in the 1E DM's guide. Gary Gygax defines it as a campaign or the DM running it in which greatly excessive amounts of treasure and or experience are given out. This campaign source book, a Catacomb Guide, defines Monty Haul as a giveaway campaign in which the players receive treasure and experience disproportionate to the dangers they overcome. And there's a little bit here about talking about leveling up in AD&D and how to combat that. Again, we're talking in the terms of 5e, and I'll get to that, but I thought it's important to know the history before we dive into what's going on here. And you can see there's a little bit about the random treasure tables in 1e, a couple of different modules. Let's see, is the history of the game that failed article in Dragon 99 pointed out modules in the hand of an inexperienced DM were a potential disaster waiting for a time and place to happen. They either could wipe out the party, require spells, skills, or items the party doesn't have, or worse, be overly free with powerful magic items. So here's some of the problems caused by it, and some of this does translate to today, so keep this in mind. Lack of a challenge. Players equipped with exceptional power may find the game no longer poses a challenge. That is 100% true, and very present in 5e, and we'll talk about that. Then we have lack of rules support. I don't think this one's too... characters who quickly exceed the standard level limits of the game rules may find there is no published game content above this level. Actually, yeah, I guess that is true. And then expectations clash. This is also a big one. Players who are accustomed to Monty Hall's style may balk at the relative lack of treasure and experience in a campaign which adheres to the standard guidelines. And here are a couple solutions. Ignore the gold. This is 1E, so you can go over that. Remove items and excess power. The DM can remove items from the campaign, have monsters capture the party and steal their items, or have the items lose most or all of their power. And I have very, very in-depth personal experience with most, if not all of these aspects in terms of 5e. So seriously, stick around when we get to it because I do have a lot of, on both sides of the table, so... increase the costs, and then it says backfires. Maintaining extremely powerful magic items can have unpleasant drawbacks. Start all over, or instill some sort of preventative measures ahead of time. And they mentioned the Dungeon Builder's book recommends thinking carefully in dungeon design to avoid overstocking dungeons with treasures. There's a little bit about the publications and stuff, and probably my favorite is in Dragon 96, the Quasar Dragon, which unfortunately I don't think there are stats kicking around anymore, is a planet-eating creature not akin to Galactus, which consumes worlds where a single adventuring party has managed to seize control of the entire world's supply of magic items, which is hilarious. So... how does this work? So 5e, for those of you, we all can attest that the challenge rating system in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is just busted. It's not accurate. I have a video on deadly monsters under challenge rating 4, something top 10, and you can see that there's a vast disparity at what one challenge rating 1 monster is versus another challenge rating 1 monster. They can be vastly different, and if you balance purely in terms of what you think the book tells you to do, you may be sorely surprised, or you pick what you think is a very difficult encounter for your party. Turns out, not at all. They just wipe the floor with them and move on. One thing to consider, though, is even if you are using CR as maybe just like a guideline to go off of, challenge rating in 5th edition does not incorporate magic items at all. It's not part of the equation, and that can vastly upend and upset the way the game goes. Now, if you ask my players, they'll tell you that I am a very generous DM when it comes to magic items. Not necessarily a generous DM when it comes to combat, as I do often, and that's a way I balance things, and we'll talk about that. I often do go pretty hard on my players when it comes to combat encounters, I tend to roll, a little bit on the higher side, and so that helps me as a DM to kind of balance things out. But I'm also very free-flowing with my magic items, ones that I've personally designed and built specifically for characters, or what I just instill in the game and allow that to happen. I enjoy the look on my players' faces when I see them get that cool new magic item and then read the description and know what it does and finally get a chance to use it in combat. That's some of the most satisfying things to me, because not all of the magic items that I'm discussing do things in combat, but I like the watching the players excel and then start thinking, oh, well, wait, I can use this and make another combo and have all this fun things, and I can work with this other player's ability and we can do all this crazy stuff. I like seeing that. Again, that's some of the most enjoyment I get out of 5th edition, other than building a collaborative story time, a story with all of my friends and having a blast doing it, getting to see people I haven't seen in a while and connecting over something that we all love. My personal, again, enjoyment seems to come from designing magic items is one of my favorite things to do, and then obviously giving them to the players so they can experience it. But I will say that I have 100%, I give out too many magic items and too fast. I also tend to give out higher powered magic items, but the attunement system in 5e does help. Obviously, if you have only 3 attunement magic items, that does limit the power level and the power gap overall. But the other problem that I've run into is if I give out like a solid magic item at level 7, and like I've had this happen in my original game that I ran 6 years ago, the one with that was kind of started it all with us streaming online and doing this kind of stuff. I gave out magic items and I couldn't get, like, not that I wanted to, but I designed these cool new magic items and like put them out there and enemies would have them, the party would defeat them and they could pick up the magic items. And the stuff that I'd already given the players was so good that they didn't want any of the new stuff that I made. So even though I could put really cool and interesting things in the game, they would just stick to what I gave them already because there was no reason for them to change. And that was an eye-opener for me because that's kind of a bummer, right? Like, I gave the paladin, a sword that, if you critical hit with it, it gives you temporary hit points, and if you kill a creature, it gives you a little bit of healing. And it was just like a decent longsword made out of bone, and he loved that longsword. And then like I put a really badass like axe in the game, like a flame tongue, but it was a lightning tongue, same stats, just doing lightning damage. And then I was gonna put in a Holy Avenger Greatsword because that was the only thing I could think of. I'd given them too many magic items to boost their AC, so they were too high, so it was very hard for me to hit them. So then I was like, well, if I put in a Holy Avenger Greatsword, he might want that because the Holy Avenger is so good, and that means he'll have to use 2 hands, so he won't use the shield and the sword, so we'll get a little bit of change up. His AC will drop a little bit, and I'll be able to hit him more. Again, he didn't bite on it anyway, so, but that's what I'm saying. So if we go back and take a look at what the problems were, that is number 1. Lack of a challenge. Now, I'm not saying be stingy on this, and some of these they talk about depending on the game you're running. And again, like I said, remember the original article where you're reading was referencing things back in 1st edition. So a whole nother game, and I can't pretend to understand what it was like because I've never played it, so I don't know. But I'm going off of what they're calling out here and what I've experienced myself. So yes, 100% lack of challenge, right? If one of the things that's supposed to mitigate and make things more challenging is the concept of spell slots, if you give your party members something like a Staff of Fire or Ice, a Staff of Power, you have the wizard or somebody, one of the casters has this item that gives them, they have now 10 to 20 different charges that they can use to tap into a variety of very useful and very powerful spells. They might be able to go through most of the combats only using the spells from their staff and still have their entire array of spell slots left for what you were hoping to challenge them with something later. Again, I'm not saying that that's wrong, and there's probably several instances of even 5th edition pre-written campaigns where you find stuff and then you have an excess of them. But if you're hoping to challenge them through lack of resources and them having to strategically choose, and you keep giving them things that allow them to mitigate that resource challenge, that's something you're going to have to run into, where they're just going to walk through the challenges and have a full array of everything and ready to go and just wipe the floor with your monsters. I can say, having played in Horde of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat, Horde of the Dragon Queen itself is pretty light on magic items. I went from the entirety of like Horde of the Dragon Queen through all Rise of Tiamat with a +1 longsword that I got at the end of Horde of the Dragon Queen, and that was like the only magic weapon I had as a paladin. Like that was it. That was my magic weapon, was that +1 longsword. And that was fine. It did what it needed to do, but like I didn't have a ton of choices of a bunch of different weapons to choose from. So yeah, I think it says, and again, the article here goes on to say, giveaway games like this pale very quickly. Soon no one feels challenged by anything the DM throws at them. People get bored and the game folds. Sometimes 1 or 2 players are shown exceptional favoritism. This can definitely be true in a campaign by the DM, and everyone else gets shafted. No matter how you do it, giveaway games like those described above will produce nothing whatsoever but a sorry, frustrating mess. Another example I can give to you is if you go and look at the Storm King's Thunder campaign that's here on this channel. We had our friend Pat run that game. Pat's really first time ever running a game. Well, he ran games offline, but he never really ran a game for us. And it was a massive eye-opener to me, because anytime we asked for something, he gave it to us with pretty much little to no challenge, and just gave us whatever we wanted. We're like, hey, can we do this? And we'd like sometimes just be like, hey, you know, what do you think about, could we maybe craft this or buy this? And he was like, sure. And whatever we wanted, we got. And that becomes very boring very quickly. You think that you want to have the DM just give you whatever you want because it sounds like a great idea. Hey, can I craft this magic shield that lets me cast shield, is an adamantine shield, so it makes me immune to crits, and it gives me +10 foot movement speed. And he was just like, sure, it'll cost you X amount of gold, but he'd given us so much gold it didn't even matter at that point. We leveled up at a ridiculous pace. Part of it, I think, is because we were just doing what he told us, but I don't think he fully understood how experience points work. So we leveled up, you know, I think in the first 3 sessions, we went from like level 1 to almost level 7, maybe even level 10. So we were just powering through stuff, getting all of these different abilities. We had really high ability scores as well from the rolling rules that he developed. And it continued to compile. And I guess I have my YouTube notifications on. It just kind of became boring, you know? And like, there's like I don't want to call it, I don't think it's sadistic, but there's definitely that part of you is like, how far can I push this just to see if I can? But like, he would throw challenges at us, you know, different dragons or giants in Storm King's Thunder, and we just wiped the floor with them left and right. And it wasn't a challenge. He seemed disheartened whenever we did it, but then he would try to throw more stuff at us, and we would just then continue. Now, in the beginning of the campaign, right at the start, we were using clever tactics to overcome the enemies, but very quickly after that, we excelled to start getting money, and then we're able to just buy whatever we wanted, and the game started to lose fun. And that campaign was the shortest one on the channel. I think it was only like 12 or 13 episodes. And, you know, when he was, you know, kind of lamenting to me about how we were just, you know, wiping the floor with all the things. And I said, well, here's another module. I was like, stop doing Storm King's Thunder, transition to Against the Giants in, you know, Tales from the Yawning Portal. This thing is set for like 3 to 5 levels higher than we are. Throw it at us as it is. Don't change anything. Give us that much more of a challenge for a game that's set for people so much stronger than us, because we don't have access. You know, we have all these magic items. Maybe that'll be more of a challenge. I remember he gave the wizard a spell book that had every single spell in the game in it, and she could just choose whatever she wanted, you know, and copy as many spells as she wanted into her spell book. So she had the full wizard spell list all the time. Again, not fun. The lack of a challenge. The challenge part is important. So the other following up on that is this second piece here about the lack of rule support. Now, this isn't necessarily as important, but if you're a new DM or someone that only feels comfortable running pre-written stuff, you can run into this problem where you're giving out experience too quickly or something like that, and you exceed past the rules of the game, and there's no published content for the level your party is at. So let's say, again, this is older editions, there was different stuff, but let's say your party is playing Descent into Avernus, and the DM's giving you a lot of experience, more so, and then by the time you kind of get to maybe The second to last chapter of Descent into Avernus, you're level 14, level 15, which I think is above what the level of the game is supposed to run to. And then you finish Descent into Avernus at level 16, which means you probably could walk through the final encounters without too much difficulty. And you want to keep going with the campaign, but you're level 16, and there is no official published content out there that covers level 16 characters. So now the DM needs to either come up with new rules to cover the fact that you are now level 16, or find something to deal with it. Again, this could also have been a thing if you were dealing with going to level 20 and beyond. If you were old, higher than level 20, and there's no epic level rules for 5th edition. There are third-party options, and again, if we're talking back in the day, there was less options for third-party stuff where people would just go out of their way and make these kinds of things. So if you're level 20, you're like, what do? The DMG says maybe give them epic boons. That's it. It doesn't tell you how to run a game. It doesn't tell you how to change things. It doesn't even really give you a lot of monsters or campaign options. So lack of rule support. And then again, probably the biggest slap in the face to a lot of people would be what they describe here as the expectations clash. If I only played in games where my friend Pat ran them, and I was allowed to basically get whatever I want and do whatever I want, and then I go to like a local game store, and I play under Adventure League rules, which are very strict and stringent, and you can only choose certain classes. I mean, it's a little bit different now with Season 10, but I could only choose certain classes, certain books, and certain races. I was limited in what I could choose, and then the game is very structured. You get this amount of gold, you get this, you unlock the ability to purchase a magic item, and all this, and I'm used to just getting whatever I want as long as I ask the DM nicely, and now I have to play under the actual rules, or the specific rules for organized play. I might not have fun at all because I'm used to just whatever. Or I guess alternatively, I might find this like I'm playing on hard mode when really all I'm doing is playing the game as it's supposed to be played as written. So those are all things that I definitely have seen happen. And, I still struggle with them myself, is the concept of wanting to rein things in, not let the party level up too quickly. Even if you're not doing experience and you're doing milestone, you want to give I enjoy seeing, again, the players' eyes light up when you tell them, and you guys get a level, and they're like, oh man, what are we going to do? A multi-class, what are we going to take a feat? Are we going to take an ability score? All this kind of stuff. And then they get all excited, so you get excited by it, and you remember that, and you're like, oh man, what am I going to give them the next level up? I don't know. So you don't want to level them up too fast. You don't want to give them too many magic items, because you are then playing catch-up versus yourself, trying to figure out how am I going to balance these things. You either need to jack up the HP for all the monsters, which isn't necessarily fun if it's just a punching bag for the monsters to just, the players to just wail on them, to just drop HP on them so that they can eventually defeat them. They mentioned some stuff in here, right? Removing items. I've definitely attempted to do that, where the party was attacked by thieves in the night and they stole some of their magic items, and then the party never got them back. Kind of feels like a slap in the face to the players a little bit, potentially. All of a sudden, the DM comes through and steals their magic items. Alternatively, you can have the conversation with your players outside of terms of the game, like, guys, listen, I screwed up. I got it. It's too much. You guys have too much magic items. We can work through it together, but we got to call some of them back or tweak them because it's just too much. And you might even run into the same thing with, not even dealing with Monty Haul style stuff, but like if you make a homebrew race or a homebrew class and you're like, ooh, it turns out that's way too powerful. Can we just adjust that and make that call and just talk to your party about it? They talked about increasing the costs. I mentioned this in the death and dying video, right? Maybe you just increase the costs of things overall to make up for the fact that your party has access to so much gold or magic items. Increasing the cost of how much things are you could just add zeros possibly, and that might help. Maybe a stay at the inn was 5 gold, now it's 50 gold. And that helps, makes a gold sink to get rid of the gold in the game. And then it also says backfires. Perhaps some of the magic items you give have a dormant curse or something like that eventually comes out. Like maybe it's when a party member takes 3 long rests with it. After, you have a couple combats and you realize, oh man, that's way too much. Maybe it's after they've been attuned for a month that the curse comes out, or after they kill so many creatures, the curse activates, and now they have to deal with the concept of this magic item being cursed, allowing them to want to voluntarily get rid of the magic item because it has this curse, and that doesn't necessarily feel like you're forcing them to do so. You're just making it happen in the narrative of the game. And then probably one of the ones that I would least like to see is they give the option here of just starting over. Just like, guys, this isn't working. Let's end this campaign and start fresh. Hopefully I can fix it this go round. Yeah, I don't know. So again, this is more of a it's an awareness thing. I wanted to provide you a little bit of my personal experience, having done the give out too many magic items and been in the, the DM just yes mans you to everything you say. And then, bring this up to make people aware, get a little feedback. And I love to hear your stories of instances one way or another with Monty Haul Gaming in the description down below, or in the comments down below, rather. And if anybody can find me stats or updated versions of this Quasar Dragon, the planet-eating creature that eats just planet, where the party takes over the entire collection of magic items in an entire world, that sounds absolutely crazy and ridiculous, and definitely seems like a remnant of stuff we've seen in older editions. But I think I would absolutely love to see what it looks like, first of all. Art of it would be awesome. And then, if we could make 5e stats, I think we could definitely have our own little Galactus version of Dungeons and Dragons. So anyway, folks, let me know what you think, and I will see you all next time.